Social Security is back in the spotlight, and this time the stakes couldn't be higher. A powerful senator has just introduced a proposal that could change the way millions of Americans live, retire, and survive financially. If you receive SSI, SSDI, or regular Social Security retirement benefits, this update may be the most important news you hear all year. For years, retirees and disabled Americans have struggled to keep up with the rising cost of groceries, housing, gas, and medical bills. Every year, the Social Security Administration announces a cost of living adjustment, known as COLA, but many feel it never truly reflects the real inflation families face. Now, with 2025 and 2026 approaching, this senator's plan seeks to rewrite the script, giving beneficiaries not only a larger COLA increase but also restructuring payments in a way that could put more money directly into your pocket. The question on everyone's mind is simple: how much more could you receive? And when will this change actually take effect? For decades, Social Security has been described as the backbone of retirement security in America. More than 71 million people rely on these monthly checks to cover their basic expenses. Yet each year we see frustration building as the checks barely stretch from one month to the next. According to recent surveys, nearly half of retirees say they depend on Social Security for the majority of their income, and among disabled Americans on SSDI, the number is even higher. That means when inflation surges and everyday essentials get more expensive, these households are often left making impossible choices: pay for prescriptions or pay for food, keep the lights on or skip a doctor's visit. That is why this new proposal has ignited such a storm of discussion in Washington and across the country. The senator behind this plan has positioned the proposal as not just a technical adjustment, but a moral commitment to seniors and people with disabilities. The idea is straightforward yet bold: increase benefits beyond the standard COLA formula to make sure checks actually match real-world inflation. The proposal would link payments more directly to the Consumer Price Index for the elderly, known as CPIE, instead of the general CPIW, which measures costs for urban wage earners. Why does this matter? Because the elderly spend a much higher percentage of their income on healthcare and essentials that rise faster in price. By aligning Social Security COLA with CPIE, beneficiaries could see bigger increases, especially in years when medical costs spike. Imagine what that means in practical terms. Let's say your current Social Security check is around $1,500 per month. Under the old system, with a 3% COLA, you'd get an extra $45 per month. But under CPIE, if healthcare and housing push inflation higher for seniors, the adjustment might be closer to 5%, meaning an extra $75 per month. Over the course of a year, that's nearly $1,000 more in your pocket, money that could go directly toward bills, groceries, and peace of mind. Multiply that across millions of beneficiaries and the difference is staggering. But here's where it gets even more dramatic. The senator's proposal doesn't stop with simply changing the formula. It also calls for a one-time boost to payments, essentially giving Social Security recipients a financial reset after years of what advocates say has been undercalculation of benefits. This reset could come in the form of an across-the-board increase, possibly $100 to $200 more per month for every recipient, regardless of age or category. For seniors who have been stretching every dollar, that's not just a raise, that's breathing room. For disabled workers who have seen their expenses rise faster than their checks, it's recognition that their struggles deserve action. Of course, anytime we talk about Social Security increases, the big question immediately becomes, how will it be paid for? Critics of the plan argue that the trust fund is already under strain, with projections showing shortfalls in the coming decades if no action is taken. But supporters of the senator's proposal point out that the real issue is not a lack of money, but a matter of priorities. They argue that by adjusting payroll tax caps so that the wealthiest Americans pay into the system at the same rate as middle-class workers, the program could be stabilized and even strengthened for decades to come. Right now, any income above $168,600 in 2024 is not subject to Social Security payroll taxes. Raising or eliminating that cap could generate hundreds of billions in additional revenue, enough to cover larger benefits without reducing the program's solvency. This is where the debate heats up. On one side, you have millions of seniors and disability advocates rallying behind the senator, saying this is long overdue and absolutely necessary. On the other side, fiscal conservatives warn that expanding benefits too aggressively could deepen national debt or force difficult trade-offs later. Yet the undeniable reality remains: the cost of living crisis has hit seniors harder than most other groups. and current benefits are not enough. That undeniable fact is why this proposal is making waves not just in the halls of Congress, but in kitchen tables across America. Looking toward 2025 and 2026, the Social Security Administration has already hinted at COLA adjustments in the range of 2.5% to 3%, depending on inflation data in the coming months. But with this new legislative push, those increases could be amplified, meaning beneficiaries would see more than just a token raise. If the proposal passes, 2025 could mark the beginning of a new era for Social Security recipients, where benefits rise faster and reflect real costs. For seniors living on fixed incomes, that could mean staying independent longer, paying for critical prescriptions without skipping doses, or simply enjoying a little more security instead of constant stress. The proposal also speaks directly to SSI and SSDI beneficiaries. For years, disability advocates have argued that the system punishes rather than supports those who need help the most. Monthly checks for SSI recipients often leave them below the poverty line, while SSDI recipients, many of whom cannot work at all, are expected to stretch impossibly small payments across rising expenses. By raising the floor for these groups, the senator's plan promises dignity, not just survival. This is why organizations that represent disabled Americans have thrown their full support behind the legislation. There's also a political angle that cannot be ignored. Social Security is one of the most powerful issues in American politics, and no party wants to be seen as abandoning seniors. As we move closer to the 2026 elections, lawmakers know that seniors make up a reliable and vocal voting bloc. Passing meaningful increases to Social Security benefits is not only good policy, it's good politics. That's why even some opponents are signaling that they may be willing to negotiate, though they would prefer a more modest adjustment. But make no mistake, the pressure is mounting, and voters are watching closely. Now let's take a closer look at what the timeline might look like. If the senator's bill moves forward this fall, it could be debated in committees by early next year. Assuming it gains momentum, it could be included in broader budget negotiations by mid-2025. That means by late 2025 or early 2026. Actual increases could be reflected in checks. For many seniors and disabled Americans, that timing is critical. Every month feels like a struggle, and waiting years for change is not an option. That sense of urgency may be the greatest force pushing this proposal forward. Another key piece of the puzzle is how the COLA itself will be calculated under this plan. Currently, the Social Security Administration uses the CPIW, which many economists say does not capture the true spending patterns of seniors. By switching to CPIE, as the senator suggests, the system would immediately become more responsive to seniors' needs. For example, in a year when general inflation is 2% but senior-related costs rise 4%, under the new formula benefits would rise by the full 4%, not the lower 2%. Over time, that difference compounds significantly, giving beneficiaries thousands of dollars more across their retirement. For disabled Americans, the impact may be even greater. Medical expenses often make up a much larger portion of their monthly spending, and these costs consistently rise faster than the general inflation rate. A more accurate formula would finally acknowledge this reality and prevent beneficiaries from falling further behind each year. That is why disability advocates are framing this proposal not just as an economic issue, but as a civil rights issue, ensuring that people with disabilities are not systemically disadvantaged by outdated formulas. Beyond the numbers, the human impact of this proposal cannot be overstated. Consider the story of a retired couple living in Ohio on $2,200 per month from Social Security. Rising heating costs, higher grocery bills, and unexpected medical expenses have left them struggling to make ends meet. Even a $100 per month increase would give them the flexibility to stay afloat without relying on credit cards or family assistance. Or think about a disabled worker in Texas receiving SSDI who has seen his rent climb by $150 per month in just 2 years. An increase in his monthly check could mean the difference between stable housing and homelessness. These are not abstract debates. These are real lives. The senator has emphasized this point repeatedly, saying that Social Security was never meant to be a poverty program, but a program of dignity and security. The proposal, therefore, is not charity, but a fulfillment of the promise America made to its workers: pay into the system your entire career, and the system will support you when you can no longer work. In that light, the proposal is not radical but simply fair. Critics will continue to raise concerns, particularly around the cost. Estimates suggest that the changes could add hundreds of billions in new obligations over the next decade, but when compared to the trillions spent on tax cuts, defense, and corporate subsidies, supporters argue the cost is not just manageable, it is a matter of priorities. If America can afford everything else, why not afford dignity for its seniors and disabled citizens? The public response so far has been overwhelmingly positive. Advocacy groups, seniors organizations, and even younger Americans worried about their future retirement security have expressed support. In a time of deep political division, Social Security remains one of the few areas with broad bipartisan backing. That does not mean the path forward will be easy, but it does mean the conversation has changed. For years, Social Security reform discussions centered around cuts or privatization. Now, the momentum has shifted toward expansion and protection. That's a seismic shift, and this proposal is at the heart of it. As we look ahead to 2025 and 2026, the outcome of this proposal could define the next chapter of Social Security. Will Congress rise to the challenge and deliver bigger benefits that actually keep pace with real-world costs? Or will gridlock and partisan fights once again delay action while seniors continue to struggle? That is the question facing lawmakers, and by extension, facing all of us. What we know for certain is this: Social Security recipients cannot wait. The system must be strengthened. Benefits must be fair, and adjustments must reflect reality. Whether you're a retiree living on a fixed income, a disabled worker depending on SSDI, or a family member caring for someone who relies on SSI, this proposal could change everything. So as this debate unfolds, one thing is clear: this isn't just about numbers on a page or abstract policy ideas. It's about real people, real families, and real dignity. And for millions of Americans, the senator's proposal is not just a bill in Congress, it's hope.